Hello, and welcome to the corner hosting Education is the Best Medicine. Miss Howard is on a well-deserved vacation, and she will be back with us. I want you to tune in to Believe Radio. That's what you're tuning into. And I want to thank you for the corner hosting Education is the Best Medicine. Uh, I want to say happy July 4th. It's my birthday. I turned 67, and I feel absolutely wonderful. I feel blessed, and I want to thank all those that are tuning in on Facebook and YouTube. And I wanted you to continue because we're going to continue this dialogue, and it's a dialogue of empowerment and just discussions of the truth. I think one of the things I've always said is that you really need to delve into and try to maintain as truthful as you can for what you're allowed, uh, information and facts, particularly as it relates to Africans and Americans. July the 4th, man, that's an interesting date. It is the birth of this country. It's a something I've always had to deal with growing up. Oh, you were born on the July the 4th. I said, yeah. And I always, as I got older and I kind of got more mature, I think I said, well, this is America's birthday and not mine. My birthday was as I was born, and my mother was having me and almost died in pregnancy. So that is why I honor her as my mom, because she didn't have to have me. And it gets to a discussion around, and I don't know what your feelings are on abortion, and I'm not more concerned with abortion as I am in July the 4th. America, liberty, freedom is a woman's right to choose. And so my granddaughters grow up in a world now that she has less rights in than uh, her mother or my mother. And I think that's kind of astounding. So I kind of wanted to talk about July the 4th because it's the birth of the country. And again, it is, and I wanted to kind of point back to what Frederick Douglass said about July the 4th. And this is a discussion about, it said paradox versus and promise. It says a nation's story. What is it to the slave is the 4th of July? What to the slave is the 4th of July? And this is written in like July 3rd, 2018, and it's kind of synopsis of his famous speech. And he uh, again, the paper was his talk was entire to a group of white abolitionists, supporters of that were at that time working against slavery, and of course, if you have not uh, read about Frederick Douglass, you should. He was a very powerful man, visionary in the discussions around uh, uh, the evils of slavery, and uh, he made the speech on the commemorating the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and uh, he said part of I'll read some parts of the speech because I really do like. It says this 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, but I mourn. And I guess what he was saying was is that the realities of independence for the American male white dream was very true for them. They had money, they had power, they had standing um, in this, slave narrative. And so, yeah, he says, you may rejoice, but I mourn. And he acknowledged the Declaration of Independence uh, and its commitment to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that's really what this is supposed to be about: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. he says, uh, he says, and he talked about the founding fathers. He says, I am not wanting to respect the fathers of this republic. The signs of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men, too, great enough to give frame to great age. It does not often happen that a nation uh, to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view this not certainly. So you say this country was made by great men, great white men. You couldn't have done it without it. You couldn't have had those people coming together, those men coming together to form a great nation without some great men and some discussions about how the country would be. Uh, Remember, they're free from the British. They're fighting for their independence. You know, which is amazing because that's something that should be honored. The fight for independence um, on 4th of July. And he says that he stated that the nation's founders were great men and their ideals of freedom, but in doing so, he brings the awareness and the hypocrisy of the ideal by the existence of slavery on American soil. Douglas continues to interrogate the meaning of the Declaration of Independence to enslave Africans experiencing grave inequality and injustice. What's so different now? Um, I point this to the fact because in Texas, recently, we have a group of educators that want to change the name of using slavery to involuntary servitude. I would ask that you look at that definition and understand what its implications are in terms of changing this narrative. And I thought about it and I said, well, wow, why would you want to call this from slavery to involuntary servitude? Well, um, maybe it's because you want to change the narrative. And here's the definition. It says, it could be argued that the key difference between slavery and involuntary servitude is that slavery attaches that slavery's status attaches for life, but involuntary servitude only only a definite period of time. This supposed distinction, however, is meaningless when we consider the proposed behind a future possibility of being free. So, in the context of slavery versus involuntary servitude, one says that you are a slave for the rest of your life. One says that you, at some point, could be free. Well, we know that the American institution of slavery said that your fathers would be slaves. Doesn't sound like freedom to me. And again, um, you have to kind of ask, why do they want to change the definition? Because if you're not comfortable with the definition, if you're not comfortable with the facts of history, then you want to change them to suit what you want it to suit it to. It's unfortunate. There's been some uproar about this because again, uh, you know, the way I look at it is that you can't cause me pain and injury, reparations, right? Response to pain and injury, and then tell me how you want to respond to it because it's not your trauma, it's not your injury. It's my trauma, it's my injury. And if you want to settle this, then you settle that trauma and injury in the context of which it existed, not the context that you want to, sugarcoat it. And again, back to advanced race theory that we've talked about, back to, out and out wanting to lie about the facts of history. Sad but true. So again, back to Douglas and July the 4th. His discussion was pointing the finger directly at slavery and he felt that you could not have a free America and an enslaved African and American population. And let me be clear about it. Look at some of the uh, job applications, and you'll see when they ask about race, they say African American slash black. Well, African American denotes the folks that were uh, involved in the 1619 Project, were chattel slavery, went through a number of years, uh, 300 enslaved, and then dealt with Jim Crow and all those things. That is the African American. Black is a total different diaspora. It could be African, it could be Jamaican, it could be uh, uh, Dominican, it could be any of those. So it's not on the same flavor. And again, it's a wish to homogenize the group of individuals that have incurred the most, which I am an ancestor of. Um, it says that Douglas said that the nation's founders were great men for their ideals of freedom, but in doing so, he brings the awareness of the hypocrisy of their ideals by the existence of slavery on American soil. Douglas continues to interrogate the meaning of the Declaration of Independence to enslaved African Americans experiencing grave inequality and injustice. He says, fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those that I represent to do with your national independence? Uh, are the great principles of political freedom, of national justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? And he was just saying that, wow, the things that you talk about and admonish and love and raise up in the Declaration of Independence, having rang true for us. Is what it rang is a one society enslaved, one society not enslaved. Again, this has major implications because on the Independence Day, um, it creates a discussion about the terror that we've had to incur and deal with for uh, since we were brought to this country. Uh, he says that he says, "Would to God both and for both our sakes that an affirmative answer would be truthfully returned to these questions, then would my task would be light and my burden easy and delightful. But who there so cold that a nation's sympathy could not warm him? Who are so obdurate um, and dead to the claims of gratitude that would be thankful, acknowledge his priceless benefits? Who would stole and be selfish that would not give his voice to swell in the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee when the chains of servitude have been torn from his limbs? I am not that man, and in case the dumb might equally speak and the lame leap up and have a heart. And I guess he was saying that this institution, this this America and the independence was not living up to those goals. Martin Luther King said it too. And if you're just looking at these conversations, um, again, he says that. Uh, But such is the state of the case, I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. Disparities, always disparities, always a difference. I'm not included within the pale of glories and adversity. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence are bequeathed by your Father that is shared by you and not by me. The sunlight that brought light and healing to you has brought stripes and lashes and death to me. The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, but I must mourn. And that was Frederick Douglass in July 1852. He's in the middle of this fight about slavery. So imagine a country torn by that, uh, by this illicit trade, this peculiar institution, um, one that uh, from the first president, 50% of them were enslavers. Or as you get past the Civil War, supported it. Lincoln is killed. He's murdered, by the way. Anyway, um, so um, and I wanted to bring up again the issue around racial terror, and I want to bring it up because again, my birthday, July the 4th, a young black man, not more than 14, was murdered because he supposedly whistled at a white woman. His name was Emmett Till. And if you don't know him, you should. Um, in August 28, 1955, while visiting a family in Money, Mississippi, 14-year-old Emmett Till uh, is brutally murdered by allegedly flirting with a white woman 4 days earlier. So, as an African American man that's now 66, this story strikes me as somewhat sad, scary, and painful. Um, and go read about it. Go read about and what sparked this in my brain to talk about this was the a team of researchers recently relatives of Emmett Till, the 14-year-old boy who was abducted. This is by Alex Taub on June 30, 2022, in a recent article. Um, A team of researchers, including relatives of Emmett Till, the 14-year-old black boy who was abducted and murdered in Mississippi in 1955, has discovered an unserved arrest warrant for the white woman whose accusations led to his gruesome death. These were accusations, of course. And we talk about racial terror. In my brain and mind, as a little boy, now I get it. I was born in July. He was murdered in August. My mom had to talk about it. The family had to talk about it. The mom put the baby, her baby, in jet and said, "Look what you've done to our child, to my child." And this goes back to me as I was thinking about the initial issue in terms of trauma and the lynchings of men of color for supposedly whistling at a white female or disrespecting a white female, or and in some cases women of color also lynched. Uh, and the reason why I'm bringing it up too is, again, this is an issue, one of the discussions around racial terror and the reparations report. I'm going to be referring that to a lot. People need to read it and understand it because it's why things are the way they are. And this is a piece out of the report. It says that after slavery, white Americans, frequently aided by the government, maintained the badges of slavery by carrying out violence and intimidation against African Americans for decades. Uh, Racial terror pervaded every aspect of post-slavery Black life and prevented African Americans from building the same wealth and political influence as white Americans. African Americans faced threats of violence when they tried to vote, like now. So this is not anything new. This is a consistent behavior by this system to oppress us. And I'll always point to George Floyd. Because we were told, at least I was told, that we were in a post-racial society and we should get over it. So I don't think we're over it yet. I think we're just getting started. They face violence when they try to vote, when they try to buy homes in white neighborhoods, when they try to swim in public pools and when they try to go to school, when they try to assert equal rights through courts or legislation. White mobs bomb, murder, destroy entire towns. Federal, state, and local governments ignore the violence, fail to or refuse to prosecute offenders, or participate in the violence themselves. So here you have federal, state, local governments, and the police involved in our oppression. And me growing up thinking about the chaining and gagging of Bobby Seale in court. Ralph Hampton, the arrest of, some of the black female Panthers, all to intimidate us, to traumatize us. Some of the best programs came out of the Black Panthers. Food programs, back to school programs, safety programs. As this black woman who's being assaulted by a Republican war machine just for helping to get out the vote. She said, well, how does it feel when you have the president of the United States on your back? He's supposed to be for all the people. He made these two black women's lives hell. They'll never be the same. Trauma, terror. Racial terror takes many forms, such as physical assault, Emmett Till, George Floyd, threats of injury, and destruction of property. It inflicts psychological trauma and those who witness the harm and injury. Many Americans. So, how do you feel after you saw George Floyd die in front of us, murdered in front of us? People that had no heart had to feel for that. And the fact that he had to cry for his mother. That goes back 300 years. Willie Lynch syndrome. Some don't believe that. May have some merits about, how they use practices, behavioral practices to control us, make us hate each other, to cheat each other, steal from one another. That all is in historical context. Anyway, says that African Americans were traumatized from surviving mass violence by the constant terror of living in the South and the North. Lynchings in America's South were not isolated to hate crimes. Hampton, Virginia, and Slabtown. After the Civil War, African Americans lived in large segregated refugee camps like Slabtown because there was nowhere else for them to go. So you are released from slavery. You're promised 40 acres and a mule, but what you get is nothing. You've worked, and your ancestors have worked for at least 300 years to build this country, and what you get is nothing. Doesn't sound like a fair start to me. After the Civil War, African Americans lived in large segregated refugee camps, um, like Slabtown, because there was nowhere else for them to go. Hospital dispensaries and military camps were unable to serve the mass of enslaved people. Black soldiers and other refugees who entered the North due to the Civil War escaped and abandoned formerly enslaved people settled near or within the Union Army's military battle lines because they were protected that way. It was a mandate for the military to protect them, and that would end. And when the military um, left, then the violence really escalated. Um, They say racial terror remains a tool in another form of discrimination to control African Americans, from redlining and segregated schools to disparate health care and denial of bank loans. California, supported by their government, ordinarily to terrorize and murder black Californians. The Ku Klux Klan established local chapters over all the state in the 1920s, and during that time, California sometimes even held more Ku Klux Klan events than Mississippi or Louisiana. Did you know that? Then in the 1950s, California held more Ku Klux Klan events than Mississippi or Louisiana in the Deep South. Ain't going nowhere either. Still here. Um, so, kind of give you some, I'm not going to read it all because I want some folks to just do your homework. Because racial terror is significant. From Emmett Till to George Floyd to the murder of Martin Luther King, a peace loving man was shot for being peaceful. You know, so that's the 4th of July. That's the racial terror. It's Emmett Till, Frederick Douglass. And it gets to a discussion by this uh, gentleman, Lynching in America, Confronting the Legacy of Racial Terror. And he did an investigation of 12 southern states during the period between Reconstruction and World War II. EIG researchers documented 4,007 racial terror lynchings. And if I'm not mistaken, I've read some literature where, we are still the number one folks impacted by racial terror. I think it's between us and Asians. So why is this going on? Fear, ignorance, you know, that's the only thing I can figure out. Said, of course, they documented all these lynchings in the southern states, but of course, California had more Ku Klux Klan meetings than any of the southern states. So what was going on there? He says that lynching in America makes the case that lynching in America was a terrorism, a widely supported phenomenon to enforce racial subordination and segregation. Lynchings were violent public events that traumatized black people throughout the country and largely tolerated by state and federal officials. And the reason why I brought up Emmett Till, because it traumatized me. Didn't think that this woman is still free. The woman Carolyn Bryant Dunham was never charged in the case. She is now in her 80s and living in North Carolina as recently as May, according to public record. She did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Ms. Dunham was married to Roy Bryant at the time of the killing. Mr. Bryant and his half-brother J.W. murdered Emmett days after the teen was said to have whistled at Ms. Dunham during an encounter at the couple's store. The two white men admitted by an all-white jury, but later confessed to the kill. The two white men were acquitted by an all-white jury, but later confessed to the killing. They have since died. So they were able to murder this young black man, live their lives, and die peacefully. I just want to know why the warrant was never served. If we are equal people, and this is July the 4th, and one eye of justice, then why wasn't she served? Why was this document even left on the floor. I guess it was just because people didn't think that it would, the family would let this rest, or that the courthouse would hide it. It's on the floor. It says the affidavit attached to one said the three did willfully and unlawfully and feloniously without law authority forcibly seized and confined and kidnapped Emmett Lewis Till, misspelling the boy's first and last name as well as the known Lewis. A note on the warrant signed by a local sheriff said Miss Diamond was not arrested because she was not located in the county at the time. And he called it a discovery, a jackpot, and wrote in the next step that New York hoped the authority will do the job they were supposed to do in 1955. Question is, you think she's going to get arrested in her 80s? A white female who obviously lied. Hmm, that's kind of scary. Well, I bring these things up to say that past history prevents us from making mistakes into the future. And so here's a discussion that on all levels, government, local, county, police, aided and abetted folks that killed a young African American. Now, that's kind of scary. Uh, and so what they say is, it says efforts to revive the case by the Justice Department found in 2007 again last year, where the federal official said there was not enough evidence to pursue charges. They recanted parts of her accusations against Emmett, including he had grabbed her and made sexually suggestive remarks. How many men of color were murdered for what someone thought had happened to somebody? I don't know. Well, this month is July, and it is National Behavioral Health Month, Minority Behavioral Health. And one of the things that I like to talk about is the mental health and behavioral health of African Americans. Here's some of the data. It says in 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death for Blacks or African Americans ages 15 to 24. Again, African Americans, but again, Blacks. So are we talking about Blacks or African Americans, because they're not the same? You know, the subset is African Americans, ages 15 to 24. Those young men that committed and carried those AR-15s were average age was 18. And this is a discussion. One of the uh, biographers, I can't forget it, did a discussion on calling it the hidden epidemic of youth mental health issues. It was a 2 night series. Didn't catch any of it, but again, real talk. Says the death rate from suicide from Black or African American men was 4 times greater than African American women in 2018. The overall suicide rate for Black African Americans was 60% lower than that of non-Hispanic white population in 2018. Black females grades 9 to 12 were 60% more likely to attempt suicide in 2019 as compared to non-Hispanic white females of the same age. And what we have to ask ourselves is, why are young Africans in America and Blacks feeling that their life isn't worth? Is it so? Are they so crushed by the media, by the information, by lack of support, that they just feel death is the only way out. I don't know. Again, it says the poverty level affects mental health status. Black or African Americans living below the poverty level as compared with those twice the poverty level were twice as likely to report serious psychological distress and probably more violence and probably more incarceration and probably more substance abuse and all the above. A report by the U.S. Surgeon General found that from 1980 to 1995, the suicide rate among African Americans was 10 to 14 increase, a 10 to 14% increase, 233% as compared to 120% for non-whites. In other words, young African Americans and people of color are committing suicide, and this is taking into account the issue around um, um, substance use disorder or risky behaviors. It doesn't take any kind of that. Again, is the mental health picture. Um, One of the things that changed also was COVID. It said it highlighted the existing equities of health and behavioral health issues. Again, systemic and structural issues that prevent us from getting the care that we need, because if you're not valued, then you don't get the care. You know, that's why the Bay Area, why we don't have an African American healthcare center, because it's not valued. Every other community has a healthcare center. They want us to use a hub. Hub is temporary. We need a center that has mental health and uh, medical in the same unit. That's the model that's been shown to be most effective. I'm not aware of the hub model as being as effective. In other words, we still have really, really poor outcomes across the board, so we should try something different. Um, so COVID was an issue, but not just COVID, but just healthcare disparities in general. Um, and July seems to be the month uh, uh, we need to target communities of color, particularly African American and indigenous people, because of the health inequities. And again, what is health inequity? Health inequity is defined causes preventable death. There are many examples of this, but one of the clearest examples is the difference between infant health mortality among black and white babies born in the U.S. Black people are more likely than white people to have babies with low birth weights. I am the grandfather of a preemie child. She was 2 pounds 2 ounces. Uh, Her mother, who we lost 6 months ago to gun violence, um, had to. I just really loved my grandchild. She had to go up there, do breastfeeding. Just the mom. She was a mom through all that plastic and wire. Um, and one of the other focuses is men's health. According to the Centers for Disease Control, men die of heart disease, and it represents 1 in 4 deaths. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in men each year. Men are more likely than women to die from most of these. It includes hypertension, and a cardio risk factor of diabetes, obesity, alcohol, tobacco, uh, no exercise, again, racial terror. All these things contribute to folks, particularly men of color, not doing as well. And when we talk about men's health, we talk about biological factors such as the reproductive system or the conditions caused by hormones specific normally to males. And again, but now we're taking a different view as the overall mental and physical health of a man, just not his genitals. Um, and it should encourage us to, again, eat better. We have a discussion around plant-based diet, Mediterranean diet, more water, exercise, weight loss. Uh, these are the things that men need to do to take care of themselves. And ask for help. We as men have a stigma not only about asking for help for physical issues, but definitely about mental issues. It's one of the biggest concerns that I have, that men aren't talking about depression, aren't talking about anxiety, and are feeling they can handle it. And that handling it sometimes ends up in one committing suicide or, killing partners and all this madness that could be prevented. So I want men to check. You need the prostate check, again, heart disease is the one killer for men. Second is cancer, and it's cancer, prostate, lung cancer, um, uh, colon cancer. Colorectal screening is easy. They talk about anywhere from 40 to 45 now because we're seeing a larger incidence of colorectal cancer in young men. And I'm talking in the 40s, 50s. Again, easy to screen, easy to treat. Um, don't be a victim to lack of care. Um, Again, I want to thank you for this 4th of July um, show. I want to thank you for tuning in. All the Facebook response, all the folks, all my past and future patients. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for the feedback and just the connection, the real connection. I wanted to also share that we are going to be moving and growing. Believe Radio is got some awards. I think we're going to find out about that. But good place, good place to provide information, education, um, and hopefully we can make some more inroads into having these discussions about our health and our welfare as Africans in America. I would like to again thank you for reviewing and kind of hearing some of the discussions because I think what I try to do is paint a picture that allows people to see why we function the way we function or why things are the way they are. I'm not a believer in anything but the truth and trying to have that dialogue about us as we try to heal physically and mentally from the effects of all of these institutional and cultural and structural issues that have been barriers to our success. Um, I, and again, I want to thank my mom for laboring on the 4th of July 66 years ago to have me. My sister, Francesca, uh, is was born on July the 3rd. Don't worry, sis, I got your flowers. Um, and yeah, Trice, I got your flowers too, okay? Can't do one without the other, boy, I tell you. And I kind of wanted to uh, share that, you know, we should all try to grow and expand our horizons. Um, I think that it's so important that we uh, continue to be lifelong learners and to live every day the best we can. Um, uh, again, I like the discussion by OG Mendigo, and he says to count your blessings, um, uh, proclaim your rarity, um, uh, go the extra mile, use wisely your power of choice, and um, do all things in love. Uh, that's why I aspire to do. Um, and as we continue to make this chapter, and turn this chapter, uh, uh, I just conscious soul and education is the best medicine. Uh, we're going to uh, keep it moving. I think that One of the things we can do now is not be afraid to speak up, not be afraid to tell the truth. Uh, when you hear things like slavery versus involuntary servitude, you should automatically, hair should come up on your neck, because here is another example of an attempt to tell history in a more palatable fashion from those that have done and caused the trauma. Um, I didn't know you got a chance to define uh, your trauma by someone else's trauma. So again, it is entitlement. It is a level of arrogance that says that you don't matter, that your pain doesn't matter. And so that's why I talk about these things, because we have to have a clear understanding of why we feel the way we do, and why we have to no longer let these kinds of issues continue. Um, had a great Juneteenth, um, uh, great event. I want to thank Beachville Minds for the event, and I think Curtis got an award, and want to thank him for his help at the event. Um, I want to thank all of you for continuing to support me and keep this conversation going. This is running live on Facebook, and I think that uh, we want to, we're learning all this new technology and uh, all this kind of interesting stuff. I have my last piece. Uh, young uh, a young woman of color was working at Kaiser and did some stuff on race, ethnicity, uh, and healthcare. It was one of the first uh, conversations I had seen in regards to this discussion. It was Carla Lewis. She was a senior policy analyst for Kaiser Foundation, and she broke, the discussions into ethnicity in terms of the Kaiser population. Of course, 3/4 of it was white. 12% was at that time Latino. No, 12% was African American, and Asians was 3%, and Native Americans. Um, and what she found is that when she talked about infant mortality rates, as we were noting, African American women had the higher infant mortality rates. And at that time was what, for every 1,000 births, it was like 15. Native Americans came in at for every 1,000 births, 10. And those numbers are probably, again, those numbers haven't changed. That's what's scary about this. White females, white were nine, Asian 5, and Latino was 5. So again, infant mortality for mothers aged 20 by race ethnicity. Again, this statistically showed that African American babies were dying. And when you looked at the insurance, well, of course, most white folks had insurance. Latino came in 42%. So 71% for whites at that time, 42% for um, Latino, 50% at that time for African Americans, and 61% for Asian and Native American, American Indian. Um, the And she did a discussion on children, uninsured versus insured. Two Latino children at that time were the most underinsured. African Americans were 18. Whites were tied with whites. Um, and this is with income of less than 200 on the poverty line. over the poverty line, uh, again, whites tend to drop to like 1 to 5%. African Americans were 8 to 13, and Latino was anywhere from 13 to 14% in terms of insurance, right? So if you don't have insurance, you can't get any health care. So if you consistently have low numbers of a group without health insurance, that makes the whole community sick because the effects are reverberating, and that's what's going on now. Um, and we see it a lot in terms of uh, care, quality care, and health outcomes. Um, Kaiser had a large percentage of folks over 65 on their health insurance, anywhere between 82 to 74% of folks over 65 uh, had their insurance that they could afford, which means you have an older population utilizing the service, and more impact, more cost. Um, and again, and what she kind of emphasized that people of color were less likely to get, for example, a cardiac procedure using chronic renal disease. Uh, African American men and women were less likely to be recommended for the procedure as opposed to white men. So under referred for specialty care. Um, she also noted uh, there was a difference in cardiac care, not uncommon. That the synopsis was that we just because we were referred less to specialties, we got there later in the disease process. We had multiple more issues like blood pressure, diabetes, substance disorders affecting our care, um, then we did less well, plain and simple. Um, and I think that's not uncommon now. So why we're talking about this is that I was speaking of a group of colleagues. Before, we didn't have the information to show that these things exist. Now they do, because we have the information that's collected, and unless you don't want to believe the data, which is okay, we have a lot of that. We have a lot of people believing the truth of the lie and the lie is the truth. Ask the folks from January 6th. And it's unfortunate that uh, a final word about that. It's unfortunate that this is playing out the way it's playing out, because if you don't believe what people say from their own mouths, then who are you going to believe? Um, the fact that there's even a discussion about uh, the attack on January the 6th as being anything but unlawful and un-American is really sad. And on July the 4th, we need to celebrate, that, that America needs to stand up to its bullies. It needs to stand up to folks that would because of their own perverse self-interest, would want to ruin this great experiment for their own means, issues, and gains, because it doesn't fit their narrative. Back to um, uh, slavery versus involuntary servitude, back to Emmett Till, back to racial terror, back to men's health, back to a woman's right to choose. That's American. I want to thank you. It's been great. Uh, we're winding down. Um, please, hit us up on Facebook. Please tell friends, families, enemies about the show, about Believe Radio. I think it's growing in its content. We have a great group of folks doing shows and get a chance to listen and share content and get a different view of the world. Get a different view of what's going on. Uh, you know, challenge yourself. Uh, yeah, you know, challenge yourself uh, to be like Miss Karma Phyllis Jones, physician, wrote a paper on naming racism, and what she compared it to is uh, institutionalized racism was compared. She compared it to uh, the initial historical insult, slavery, structural barriers, inaction in face of need, societal norms, biological determinism, and unearned privilege. And she had compared it to, two uh, plants. And who's the garden? The garden is the government. The government. And it's part of the side to act to control resources, dangerous when aligned with one group or another, and not concerned about backing equity. What is equity? Equity. We're looking for equity and an elimination of disparities. That's what we want. That is fair. And if we need another system to do it, fine. Because the one we've been using has really, really been not serving us well and has been responsible for a lot of the trauma that we face in these systems. Um, it's been my pleasure. Uh, and uh, it's my hope that we was able to share some things that, kind of made you think a little bit or made you kind of go, oh, okay, something I can look at, something you can work on, you know, enjoy this weekend, be careful, be safe out there. Uh, Miss Howard will be back in her seat doing the corner. Uh, Wish them well and having a great vacation. Uh, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It's been an absolute blast. Um, uh, I want to thank all my family, all my patients that are hitting me up on Facebook, and I'm trying to be more media, savvy. But boy, I tell you, learning this stuff is kind of interesting. I wouldn't have thought at 67 I'd be, Facebooking and cutting and pasting and that kind of thing. But my granddaughter says I gotta learn so we can communicate. So I want to thank all my girls. My middle girl graduated. Congrats, Kay. You did a good job. I'm impressed. And I want to thank your grandmother. Thank all the grandmothers and grandpas. And again, happy birthday to me. Uh, Excited. Thank you, Believe Radio audience. Look forward to you in the next show. And they say, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it popping. Let's keep it happening. Okay. Again, be safe out there on July the 4th. Um, Watch the fireworks. You don't need them. They blow things up. Injuries. You don't need any of those. Again, I want folks to uh, count their blessings, proclaim the rarity, go the extra mile, and uh, do all things in love. Thank you. Have a great, great, great holiday. Be careful out there. Thanks, OG Mendigo. Thanks, Mom, Pop, Dad. Everybody made this possible.